Good evening, everyone. We'll call a meeting to order. Joy, would you please call the roll?
Hamilton.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Ledger Galen.
Yes.
Hammes.
Yes.
Howley.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time tonight for our special meeting. Two really important items for us to consider tonight. And one is to take a look at the upcoming financing and bonds that we'll be selling and what those funds are going to be used for and how that's going to make our whole debt picture look. So we'll start with that and invite Travis Squires from Piper Jaffray to give us a review. Good evening, Travis.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Travis.
All right. Want me to go ahead and jump right in?
Yeah, jump right in.
Okay. Feet first. Here we go. Packet's smaller, and you're probably saying, yeah, it's just because you printed double-sided this time. It's not too long, not too lengthy. My goal tonight is to really just walk through a couple items, look at your overall financing plan, global budget related to your rec project, take a look at the timeline, what's left on as far as action steps on the financing, and then take kind of a step back, 1,000-foot view of your overall debt picture, how the new issue fits within there, and kind of the repayment sources, so you guys have kind of an idea of where the ship's going from here with respect to your levy rate and overall debt service payments. That being said, I have a packet in front of you. It also should be the same as what was sent and accessible by your iPad. So I'm on page 2, moving on to page 3, looking at the global budget for the overall rec project. Based on the global project budget, if you look at the items on the right on that top table, these were taken from your overall budget that was approved at your December 23rd meeting, or the document was dated December 23rd. So you have the preliminary items with respect to the land and kind of miscellaneous cost at $237. Sidewalks and safety at the site. You'll notice that wasn't on that original budget that you guys saw last meeting, but it is part of the overall plan. There's money set aside up front right now to the extent that the design goes through and what that looks like. There's $49,000 allocated for those costs out of this bond issue. You have the outdoor pool budget, $3.732 million. The indoor gym and rec center, $4.805. The additional scope items, hoops and the solar.
I know the hoops are in there.
What's that?
Do you know where that's from, Melanie?
It's
It's just broken out. It's probably an outside item.
well, it's increasing the structure so that it can support the hoops.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Hoops.
Yeah, see,
Indoor bracketing for the
Oh, not basketball.
for the baskets.
Okay.
For the basketball hoops.
Yeah.
For the stanchions that will hold the rim and backboard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when you're a finance guy, that just looks like a line item. I don't have all the explanations. Melanie said I got your back all the way. So
Well, there were early discussions about some outdoor hoops over there, but
Okay.
I didn't know whether those. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay. And then you see on the left-hand column the sources of funding, the net proceeds from this financing allocated towards the rec project, just over $3.3 million. The grant funding, and then about $4.5 million in donations allocated towards this project. As you can see, you now have surplus available. You're in the black. That's always a good item to see. Obviously, as you move through the project, to the extent that anything is added to the scope, the city kind of portion of the funding right now is exhausted, so that really kind of then falls on the private side, the donations. A breakout then down below of if we're just going to peel back and look at this current 2014-15 current fiscal year projects, you can see sources of funding on that bottom table, $3.775 million. You see the crosswalk projects, which is separate, but it's something that was included as kind of part of this fiscal year. You'll see most of that is offset by other funds on hand. So grants, SERF fund, fiscal year 15 budget. There's a small portion that does come from this bond issue, about 9,000, but 90,000 comes from those other cash sources. Outside of that, you have the Frontage Road South Highway 1 project, which is now basically completed. That's part of your TIF portion of this bond issue. And then the rec project, you can see the breakout. Referendum amount was 3 million, kind of other needs, 268, and then specifically the sidewalk safety is broken out, that 49,000. Overall, the total of that those green shaded items is that 3.31 million that's up above. So that's how the spreadsheet kind of flows back and forth to make sure that your funding this whole project is currently within budget, within your financing resources. So obviously, as a city council, just continue to monitor those budget things as you're going to go out to your final design and with respect to awarding contracts on your indoor gym rec center. Any questions on the overall budget picture as presented? Okay. Page 4 then and 5 are really just an outline of the timeline. You know, most of these things obviously on page 4 are in the past. Page 5 then, if you really look at the last couple items, you're really kind of narrowing down to the last few things. Once tonight is completed, we'll move forward with having bond council finalize your issuance documents for next week's meeting. So next week's meeting, you'll probably have, my guess is, one big resolution. There might be 4 agenda items from Allers and Cooney. Those will all be, I'd say, more procedural steps. You're going to have awarding the sale as one resolution, approving the tax exemption certificate, approving appointing a registrar and paying agent on the bonds, approving issuance. So kind of a lot of paperwork headache, but really what you're doing is just kind of the last formal legal step for issuing the debt. Outlines the covenants and sets up for repayment and the security on the bonds. As of right now, I am not able to attend that meeting, so if you guys have questions about that, when you get the agenda items, I can answer them beforehand or be available by phone if necessary. As of right now, the plan is for funds to be in the city's accounts on February 3rd. I'd say right now there is a chance that could get moved back a couple days, just depending on bond council's preference on turning around documents. It's a pretty quick document turnaround for them to get the closing done. Any questions on the timeline? Okay. The last piece that I want to do is kind of take that 1,000-foot view, overview of your overall general obligation debt existing prior to your general obligation notes that you're planning to issue here in the next couple of weeks, and then look at it afterwards. So if you're on page 6, you can see your general obligation debt. You have 4 bond issues outstanding right now. 2006 bond, 2010, a 2011 bond, which was a refinancing of the 2001, 2013 bond anticipation note, and then you can see on this, I'm on the general obligation debt sheet here. You can see on the pre-levy for fiscal 15, the city did levy $309,000 towards this first year's payment on the current debt issuance. So you see principal payments in the top column, a handful of notes off to the right, boxes for me to kind of keep track of notes as we've gone through the issue. Bottom is principal and interest. So when you get to the bottom half, kind of middle, you can see you have total payments in column 7 of that bottom table. And then you have different items that will offset your overall debt payments. For example, this current year, there were TIF funds budgeted for a portion of the 2011 issue. You can see in column 10, it says less BAN. That's your bond anticipation note. So in fiscal 15, you're going to use your capital project funds that were set aside up front from the BAN or capitalized interest to pay that $45,600 this year. And then the $1,945,000, you'll take that out with long-term debt sometime within the next 15 months. Column 11 shows local option sales tax funds. As a reminder, that's a portion of the 2010 bond issue that was allocated to streets. So So if you remember, there were multiple portions. Part of the referendum allows the city to use the money towards street work, up to 50%. So that portion of the bond issue here fits within that 50% component towards streets. So that's the portion of the 2010 bond paid by loss. In column 14, you get what I say is net P&I, or net principal and interest. So this is what's left over to come from the debt service levy. Based on your valuation this year, that levy rate is $451,466. That's the amount you levied for debt service this year. Absent issuing any additional debt, it would drop to $390, then $313, $290, and then in 2022, after 2022, you can see there's no debt. Now, keep in mind, this is prior to the pool referendum coming on. So what you'll see on the next couple pages is how the pool referendum fills that in as expected by the taxpayers, an increase of right around 76 cents. So you'll see next year staying at 451, and then the remaining years will certainly drop. Following page, or I guess before we move on, any questions on kind of your existing debt portfolio, just kind of a high-level overview? Okay. Page 7. So this is the current structure of your new bond issue. You can see I'm going to just work left to right on this page. Column 2 is your existing net debt service levy rate from the prior page. Excuse me. You see interest rate 3.5%. You see the principal payments and interest payments on the new debt. Your total new payment. So this is for the full 3.775. You see bond registration. So you'll have a paying agent, $500 a year for Bankers Trust. And you can see fiscal 15 abatement. So you have funds on hand right now that will be allocated towards the TIF portion of the debt. So the city will use existing TIF funds that you have to pay a portion of that $775,000 that is part of the TIF issue. You'll see that broken out on the next page. And then you see planned abatement. So that is also future TIF revenues to come from the new increment that will be generated in those new areas. Approximately $50,000 per year. You can see some years higher or lower. Then you see a column 10 that says net new payment. This will be the amount that will be coming from debt service levy on the new issue. And then column 12 is your total levy combining column 2 and column 10 and 11. So this is your levy, debt service levy amount that will be needed to retire your debt outstanding. So you see a 451, 449, and then it drops to 380, 360, and then approximately 80 cents then out through 2034.
Travis, did you do a calculation on where that puts us against our valuation in terms of percentage?
I don't have that in
debt?
front of me.
Okay.
Are you talking debt limit?
Yep.
Debt limit number.
Since that's a new grand total and
5% of the valuation. Have you got the new valuations, Melanie?
and
I
it's
see a preliminary 2014 valuation on the top of page 7.
That's just picking up.
I've got it.
That's picking up the taxable and not the before rollback number. Just
So-
let my computer fire up and then I can do it.
okay. Yeah,
come
and
back
Joy,
to it.
Joy will get the number too.
Travis, just to be clear, this page 7 is just the schedule for the current bond that we're taking out, this 3.7 million.
Yep.
The total is a combination.
Yeah, when you get to columns 12
12 is
and 14, you're now illustrating your total debt portfolio.
Okay,
Column 10 is the referendum portion. Well, you'll see it broken out on the next page. The following page then is a breakout of the 2015 bond between purposes. So I've titled those the pilot growth, the rec site, and then debt service levy or the referendum component. So what you see in columns 2 through 6 is an illustration of the Pilot Grove site. Overall principal and interest payments. You can see if there were no valuation generated or tax increment financing revenues available from that site, you can see in column 4 what the necessary levy rate would be in order to make those payments. That being said, in column 5, you're using TIF, use the term abatement to reduce the levy. Overall, there is 1 year that does show a net levy rate in fiscal 16, and that's just dependent on when valuations come. As soon as the valuations are on the book, you can still claim that revenue. On paper, though, it's going to look like there's a levy generated in 16, but likely you have fiscal 17 revenues to make that up. So very common on TIF projects. You got to wait for the valuations to follow. Sometimes you end up with an interest payment 1 year that you have to make up with TIF revenues the year after. So both TIF components have that illustrated. When you get over to the referendum debt service levy, you can see that your payments do go up slightly. You can see they're lower out through 2022 because of your existing debt structure. And then they jump to about $240,000 per year, still right around that 78-80 cents that was talked about with the referendum when that was passed. But it does give you a little bit more breathing room up front to not have quite as big of an increase over the next couple of years as you continue to work on structuring your debt portfolio. The final page then is just a breakout between the 4 banks and how they're each taking their portion, what their payment schedules look like. The goal was to try to divide it up as equal as possible so they all had the same type of debt portfolio as far as average life of the loan was concerned. They had all agreed and signed off on the original structure. We did come back and make one change that we're going to have to get their sign off on, but for their purposes, it shortens the city's repayment a little bit because we're accelerating using the TIF funds in that first year. They're probably not going to object to that. It certainly helps their loan portfolio. Any questions with respect to any of the material in front of you? Questions, comments, concerns about the next steps? I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
So I guess this is part of the mayor's question that you were waiting to get your computer on, but
Yeah.
as far as our ability to do additional TIF projects, does this this amount of indebtedness affect that?
Right now, I believe you're somewhere right around 60%.
That's what I was thinking, it was 60, yeah.
So as soon as this pulls up, I'll get you that number. I mean, the type of projects you're talking about, I mean, even if you were to add $3 million, which would be a large number of general obligation type debt, you would still have room within your debt limit. Within your debt limit, though, it obviously does have a implication about what you're comfortable with. Is there a certain level of obligated debt that you're comfortable with, whether it's 70 or 80%? Some councils have policies set up for that. Something obviously you can work through when the new administrator gets on board, what he's comfortable with. If he has a recommendation as you guys continue to kind of work at some of your financial policies.
So the TIF, when we borrow money for a TIF project, it is general obligation debt. It's just simply paid back through taxing.
Yeah, it can be both. Most cities will do it as a general obligation debt paid back with TIF revenues because it'll be at a lower interest rate, as opposed to doing what we call just a TIF revenue bond, which might require you to have a reserve fund. The only pledge at that time is the revenues of the area, in which case you wouldn't have been able to do this as a TIF revenue bond because you're anticipating the values. There's no values to show on the books. You'd have to have a minimum assessment agreement in place in order to bond on kind of a prospective basis against your TIF. And my computer is running now. Other questions?
Going back to, let me find it. Page 6,
Okay.
column 10. So that short-term 1.9 that we borrowed, we were hoping to pay that, or majority of that would be paid when we sold Logan.
No.
I wouldn't say a majority. There's
Just a
right now,
portion?
I think there was about 300,000 or 400,000. That was originally when the
Okay.
thought of the purchase price was going to be closer to 1.7.
Yeah, a little higher than it's going to be. So what's the revenue source for repaying that 1.9?
Well, right now it'll probably look at a structure in order to kind of wrap around the goal to not exceed kind of the 451 levy rate that you'll set this year and next. And then the year after that, you do have a little bit of relief coming with your fiscal 17. So if you were to go to page
Travis,
Page 7, you'll look at your levy rate, you can see that in fiscal 17, it drops from 450 down to
Okay.
380.
So that's
It
that
does look like
short-term-
you'd have some room to keep within that levy rate, still allow it to drop a little bit, but probably not going from 450 down to 380, probably not a 70-cent drop. You would be able to see a little bit of drop.
Right.
but essentially, I mean, the short answer to it is that it's already programmed into what you've presented. The the full
Yeah.
1.9 repayment is already programmed into everything that you've presented. If we wanted to restructure it
Yeah,
to
it-
accelerate it, you
Well,
could. but-
it'll still show as an addition onto this debt levy increase. We gotta, until that's put in place, it won't show up there. So eventually, yes, it will. But when you're looking at column 14 on page 7, you see it drops to 380, so it goes 451, 449 on the levy, then it drops to 380. We haven't factored in your next bond issue.
Okay.
But eventually, that'll be the talk. When do you want to take this out? How do you want to structure it? Do you want to pay it off over 10 years? Do you want to pay it off over 15? Do you want to stretch it out to 20? And then so the council will then have the option to decide, well, what kind of levy rate increase do we want to have? Or in this case, do we want it to go from 450 to 420 or 50 to 440? How fast do we want to pay it off? Do we want to just keep it at 450 and pay it off as quickly as we can? So those will be options that will come up. Start talking maybe later this summer, but for sure by next spring, have to make a decision on that.
Well, one reason I ask is there's increased interest among the public in the city's levy rate, why it's set at the amount it's set. So the more the council can understand, the better. Just wanted to clarify for my own sake. Thank you.
Any question?
So you're saying the levy rate for this coming year should be 4.5?
4.4913.
That's what I got.
What's that?
That's not what I got. When I was there, yeah, I went ahead and did the state farm,
What did you get?
4.147.
4.1.
147.
You have you don't have the new schedule yet, though.
No, I think I put in what you told me though, 70 for principal.
Well, that's all changed with the conversations in the
Okay,
last couple of
okay,
weeks.
okay. Okay.
Right
I
now,
like
right now
the
you're
number
at
better.
I don't,
Yeah, right.
I know it went down. I
Public
was
would
pretty
like it, though.
excited, but yeah.
right now you're at 60.939% of your debt limit.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay. Council, any other questions for Travis? Really appreciate the presentation, Travis, and all the work that's gone into this, and we'll be prepared for next Monday. I don't
Okay.
think we'll have anything that'll come up we'll need you for, but if so, council, let us know. and we'll
I do have
contact-
actually one more
Yeah.
question. You know, when you project this out for 20 years here, you're presuming the valuations are the same or
Yeah, just
Flat.
for the illustration, yeah.
for illustration? So everything is in flux here. This is just
Yeah.
with $2015, 2015 Fairfield.
Yep. No new
change,
no
right?
new $1 million street projects 3 years from now.
Wait,
you know, so we're just assuming.
Or $1 million developments that give us bigger valuation.
Right.
Right. That's what we want. You want
Yeah.
that $5 million commercial valuation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only they're going to roll it back, so and probably not backfill it. So tonight, I mean, you can make a motion to move forward with this final debt service schedule, subject to any proposed adjustments by your bond attorney, and then next week you'll just have the resolution approving issuance documents. That's all for tonight. Unless there's any other questions, be happy to take them. You do have, your debt limit is at 60.9. You have 9.152 million remaining within your debt limit. So that already includes that you have that bond anticipation note that's already counted against your debt limit. So pretty healthy position overall. I mean, your debt burden isn't the main driving factor. Obviously, you have a lot of property tax supported debt. But at the same time, you guys have been pretty judicious in using your tax increment financing for specific projects and not letting those roll on forever and kind of becoming a retainer for projects. So you guys have been very deliberate and diligent in the way that you guys have used tax increment financing, which not every city takes that approach. I'm not saying that it's good or bad either way. I'm just pointing out the facts that would be different than other communities. Therefore, that probably allows the school to be at a slightly lower rate and the county to be at a slightly lower rate than they otherwise would have if you were instead financing all with tax increment financing revenues. So there's a lot of things at play. And, obviously, the city is the easiest person to pick on with respect to levy rates. But overall, you guys have been very judicious with your approach. You guys told them the levy rate increase would be for the pool. You told them what the levy rate increase would be with the capital improvement levy, and you guys have lived within those means for this upcoming fiscal year, and it looks like you should be able to in 16 as well.
Well, on that note,
I make a motion, as Travis suggested, to, I don't remember what he all suggested.
well, just to
Move forward with the
final
final debt
debt
service.
schedule.
Forward with the final debt service schedule.
Okay,
I'll
moved by
second.
Revelinsky, second by Rasmussen. Any other final questions? Not, please call the roll.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Ledger Kalen.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Hamas.
Yes.
Great. Thanks again, Travis. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, council, we are going to hold a public hearing on the sale of the Logan Apartment Building. We have a revised purchase agreement from our buyer for $1.175 million signed, and that we still hold that $50,000 retainer. So the proposed sale would be for $1.175 million. And we'll open up a public hearing on the sale of Logan Apartments this time. Ask if there's anyone who would like to speak to that sale. Okay. Seeing no one interested, we'll close the public hearing and would entertain a motion authorizing the sale of Logan Apartments. Before we do that, I just want to let the council know that the board has been advised of the stage of the sale at this point in time. The Logan Apartments Board. And Tom Jimenez, who is the buyer, has been over to the building and has met with Jolene, is interested in having her continue with management. So there's likely going to be some continuity there, and has met with several of the residents as well. So I think that there should be a pretty smooth transition as well. One of the things that did come up in our discussions finally, our original advertisement for sale included 3 residential lots that are attached to that, but our appraisal was for just essentially for the main lot and the building. We've decoupled those, and John took care of that with Mr. Jimenez. So those 3 lots will be available for sale as well. I think we'll proceed with getting appraisals on those 3 lots and then proceed to sell them as well. So I think we're in a good position to go ahead and approve the sale of the building, and I'd entertain a motion to do so.
Make a motion to move ahead with the sale of the building.
Okay. Moved by Hammes,
Second.
second by Hamilton. Discussion.
Discussion, just to be clear, to me and whoever's, the three people watching this tonight,
Well, nobody watching it.
or whenever.
Rebroadcast.
Rebroadcast,
Okay.
whenever.
Okay. So we're-
The party who's purchasing this intends to continue to have the same kind of housing
Correct. Correct. Section.
rental
Yeah.
that currently there at Logan. So no one's going to be required to move out or anything like that. So basically, as far as the users of Logan are concerned, it's going to be a pretty seamless transition, relatively seamless. They might find it to their advantage because he might even fix it up more than we did. Or
Well, the work that we did last year to have the property recertified for another 20 years as qualifying is essentially all needed to be done. I mean, that's a rent subsidy, and they will continue to pay, accept those rent subsidies from the tenants of Logan. Yeah.
So they have the subsidized housing, or there's no change as far as our sale goes. And so, anyway, I just want to state that and make for my own self and, as I said, the public. So.
And we're also retaining that money that we currently have talked about, the maintenance fund money, that's what,
70,
To-
seven-
yeah.
seven- 75
What will
or
happen to that
76.
money then, the Logan Fund?
Well, we'll just
dissolve it.
we'll take
It's all
the
going to come into our,
take the $1 million
General fund?
into that fund and then dissolve it and move it all into our general fund.
We're going to collapse that fund.
Yeah.
Is what we're going to do. For a good reason this time.
Any other questions? Not. Yes.
I mention also, as far as John's concerns, had a nice talk with Mr. Jimenez when he was here, and he understands, although he's got to make up his own mind about Jolene, but I think that's
Right.
very positive, that the residents primarily are all rent subsidy residents, and to stay that way, not only is it important that we have this 20-year approval and extension, but also, we've always done things by the HUD handbook over there. Jolene is the resident expert on that. That's been explained to him, he likes that, and the residents themselves rely on that as far as the continuity that we assure them. And I think the old board is particularly comfortable about the fact that continuity, as far as the way things will run, is important to the new buyer too, as far as staying subsidized. So as long as they do it by the book, it should work just like it has for the last 35 years. Okay?
Thank you, John. Would you please call the roll?
Hammes,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Revelinsky,
yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ledger Kalin.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Council will be meeting Saturday morning at 9. I did send out an email asking that if you're going to have committee reports to let me know so I can get that on the agenda. And we'll be getting agenda out shortly after that, so we should have something by by Wednesday. That we'll meet here at 9 a.m. And I entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Revelinsky, second by Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.